Hello. Whoa, what was that? Hello, how's it going? We're gonna, should we call it shenanigans? Uh, maybe that's a good way to qualify it. We are going to look at some CEF again, kind of in the context of like how Wry is integrated within Tauri. So, context. Last week we had Bill Avery on, and Bill has been working on pushing forward the work within cef-rs. There's a repository within the Tauri org, which enables or is looking to eventually enable a use of CEF within Tauri. Now, CEF is Chromium embedded framework, I believe, and essentially that's like Chromium without all the extra browser stuff necessarily on top, and it's built in a way that allows you to like embed it into things. So anytime you need a web view that you don't use the system web view, there's a good chance it might be using CEF because that's sort of the common alternative to like a system web view. So it's just a way to like render a browser context outside of like Chrome. Now, the reason we are interested in the like in the context of Tauri is that right now Tauri by default is using the system web view, which works fine for some platforms. Other platforms, Chromium might actually perform better, or we might have a better time with it. So this is sort of the end goal is seeking to support alternatives. System web view can still potentially be the default, but on an operating system level, you could choose like one operating system uses the system web view, the other operating system uses something else that might be more appropriate for whatever reason, performance issues or the way it's packaged and built. Every platform is going to be a little bit different, and potentially support each one of these options differently. So alternatives and options are, and like competition is a good thing. So what we're going to do today is kind of build on top of what we were talking about last week, and the like next steps, the action items that we kind of to use the corporate speak, the action items we pulled out of last week were that if we could use cef-rs and get that to render within like Wry or Tao, I mean, get it to render within Tao potentially. But Wry is the system web view. So some of that is we potentially want to provide it as an option at a similar level or similarly to how Wry is implemented, was Bill's presumption. So if we can, we'll probably end up looking at both Tao and Wry, but at least the repositories themselves. But we might end up looking at Wry specifically because we want to provide like similar APIs, similar hooks and such. Hey Joe, good to see you. So we are, I think we probably look at Wry first and just see where those hooks are, and uh, we'll dig in a little bit there. We'll probably end up opening up an example first because the idea is if we can get an example of something running, that is potentially a good first step towards actually implementing it. Get the hacky thing working and then make it nice is kind of the idea here. So what we are, do I have? Keyboard things. Okay, well, let's switch over. I want to pull up this thingy because I want to remember to fill this out a little bit better. So today's agenda is basically going through Tao and its integration with Wry, and specifically how we could potentially swap out Wry for CEF. But I think we'll end up looking at the Wry repo because those the examples are implemented in a way where we would want to copy it, I guess. So let's pop over to the Tao. We'll look at the Tao repo. Check out the Tao repo, and then run the Wry examples. Copy one and start swapping. I don't know how far we'll get with that, but I suspect copying one and swapping it is going to be a large topic that we'll end up wanting to break down. But I think that's what we're going to end up looking at today. Okay, so what I wanted to figure out, I should have a shortcut. What was it? Was it control? So I did tweak. I can now actually zoom in. First steps first. I guess let's open up Tauri. Oh, here, I could do it right here. I need to zoom in. So I can do this now. Whoop. No, I need to do both of these. How do I zoom in on this? Whoop. Oh, no. Zoom. Cancel. What is the hotkey for this? It's funny how like hotkeys end up being really nice, and then you set them up, and then you just it sort of becomes like a habitual thing, and I don't think about the shortcuts that I use anymore until I go to use them, and like my keys are different. So then I need to I gotta recall what the actual shortcut is to pull the thing up. Okay. Windows terminal zoom. It is control equals? Really? Okay, so I need to go to the second layer. So I'm gonna hold down the thumb button right here. So then control equals. Ah, it is, yeah, okay. So control equals control minus. Interesting. Why isn't it control plus? That feels odd. Why would it be equals? All right, well, whatever. We got it. We got that working. Yeah, sure, fine. I don't want to mess around with my shortcuts too much. And like part of it too is the shortcuts are slightly different between Mac and Windows, but then they're like drastically different when I get between operating systems on this keyboard. Like my layout here makes the feel of using it way different. Okay, let's go to Tauri apps. And we do have Wry. Actually, I was gonna pull down Tao first though, right? So let's go over to Tao. Servo Wry demo. I do not even remember going on that branch. Okay. Go up a directory and get clone this. Okay. And let's check out Tao a little bit. So we want to, I guess let's put the examples first. If you're, I got cat hair floating around on my mic. Cover, whatever the thing is called, I don't remember. Maybe we pull up the let's pull up the architecture doc real quick. That will be a good jumping off points, I believe. If we look at core concepts in Tauri architecture, there's this little graph here. So what we have going on is upstream, all still within the Tauri org. There's Tao and Wry, and then there's the core. So you take Tao and Wry and combine together. Tao is the window, the thing that holds the piece that you're rendering. Wry is one of the options to render within that window. And then the core is sort of like helper libraries and such on top of it to make it easier to work with. So we have Tauri build, cogen, runtime, both a Wry implementation and then the like main Tauri section. And then there's some macros and utils that come with it. But the Tauri runtime is like the base that glues a bunch of this stuff together. And I think if we would end up looking at doing something with CEF, we're either looking at Tauri, like a Tauri runtime CEF, and then that would end up swapping out in place of Wry, is I think what the expectation is here. Now, if we look at both Tao and Wry, each of those are like lower level pieces, right? But some of it is for demo purposes, but some of it is, especially when like working cross browser, there's some level of like, you can't solely rely on like running tests in CI. There's some level of like, I need to run the thing and see how it works like on this operating system. Because even like if you run it in Windows in CI, that Windows in like GitHub Actions is potentially a slightly different version of like what the user would end up seeing when they use it in like Windows 11 or Windows 10. I think that's running like Windows Server something or other. And usually when you're doing that too, you tend to run in CI, you run those headless, which means that you're potentially not going down some of these code paths that you would want to. So both Tao and Wry have a fair number of examples to make it easier to like test this functionality. So if we look at, well, like what would be a good one to look at? I mean, really, we only care about, and you can see here, like this is Tao. We're concerned about Windows. So all of these examples are very much like window based, not the operating system, but like minimize and maximize and full screen and drag window. They're not so much concerned about the stuff that you're rendering within it. So like if we just look at window, we have here's the event loop. The event loop is literally running in a loop. And it basically just runs forever. And within that, you are doing things. So there's this control flow wait, and you're matching on events. So you basically just run in a loop and wait for events. We have a window builder, which also comes from Tao. And what we're doing here is we're rendering, and where does event loop come from? Okay, so event loop is also tied to Tao. And there's some like specifics too. Like if you're working with a window in the event loop, there's some level of like, who owns that event loop, or who is like the primary owner or primary thing that's working with this event loop. And in the past, that is part of why Wry and Tao were more directly tied together, where now we have some options in Tauri v2 to have like multiple web views rendered in the same window. So we have a window, and then within that window, you could do, say 4 web views. And that's in part because that event loop, there's been work to get that event loop in a place where there's more like shared ownership of it. So it's less less aggressive in needing to be the thing that controls the event loop is probably the best way to say it. And we might see some of that pop up once we get into Wry. But that's specifically something that if we wanted to render other things than just a web view within this like window context, say like a game or other shader type elements, who like owns it tends to be one of those like primary questions that you start to need to think about. Okay, control flow. We do a bunch of events. This is doing like redraws. Here's a close window event, the exit event, and then this is just doing a redraw of the window, I guess. Okay. I guess we can probably try just running one of these. Taking a look at the dependency tree here a little bit. Got some targets. I think something that will end up being interesting. I mean, maybe it's something we can look at. But one of the things that I think would be interesting in implementing this is if the intent here is CEF as an alternative, like default to system web view, be able to like per operating system swap to different like rendering engines. Like as conceptually, like Wry and whatever system web view, et cetera, is effectively just like a rendering engine for you, right? You need some way to like render this thing, and having it as a feature that we can just swap in as needed for even for specific operating systems, I think is probably going to be the best DX we could have. Here's this raw window handle, actually, as we were talking about that raw window handle. That's the piece that like ties to this window and then that event loop. So the types in the packages, having those in like a shared space where you're expecting to be able to like pass ownership, that was one of those important steps in enabling a bunch of this work. Okay. Yeah, so like these configuration targets, dependencies, like that might end up becoming an issue or a consideration. But also these feature flakes. They're not, I mean, like you can see here with Serday, you can toggle on a feature Serday derive. So we could, if we do it at the feature level, we could do a setup where you have dependencies with a system web view, and then you could have, but actually on Windows, we want to say Tauri with CEF instead. Like that's probably the best DX, but there's not a whole ton of control there, so that might be something. And Wry would need to be able to Wry would need to be in a place where, or at least like the runtime plugin or something would need to be in a place where I would expect to be able to be swapped out to, and I don't think that's quite the case yet. Okay, yeah, let's try running one of these examples real quick. I think we can just do like cargo run -s example, but let's check the README real quick. Platform specific notes. We're not running on Android or any of these. If you're using Linux, it's using GTK3, which is GTK3 is like the system web view for Linux, effectively, and there's a bunch of overlap between Tao and Wry because they're kind of tied together, but not really. They can be used separately. But these examples potentially have some expectation of like rendering a thing within the window. So I assume that's why this is also expected to be installed. Okay, yeah, let's just try a cargo run example. Oh, you know what we can do? We can look at the list of examples. I think they are defined in our cargo.toml. Right. Targets. Lots of targets. Tau macros. I thought you had to like list them in there. Maybe it's something with the example folder. Cargo -- example. I don't. Yeah, I mean, like, is it just window? Okay. Is it just by the file names, I guess? The examples, at least within Cargo, I've never actually set that up personally. I've only ever like used examples, or at least the last time I set up an example like this was years ago. So I imagine the Cargo ecosystem has changed. I feel like you used to have to specify all examples in the cargo.toml. Okay, is it here? Here we go. A fantastic window. Now you can see all the events come through on the terminal. There's really nothing in here. It's just rendering like a box. And it's checking all of the device events too. So mouse motion, you'll see anytime I move the mouse, you'll see those coming through. So this is the Tao example where it's just drawing a window with a specific size and it's not really rendering anything within it. Now, if we stop this, is there one that is, I mean, I guess I don't really care. I was gonna say, is there one that's rendering a web view? But honestly, I think we call this one good, and we pop on over to and run some of the Wry examples. Yeah, I think that's what we do. On a bit of a side note, though, what is my? I think it's Control Alt Space. Is that what it is? I'm trying to remember what pulling out my to-do app is. So Control Alt Space. Is that what it is? Windows left. Is it Shift? No, it's not Shift. And I don't think it's the Windows key, is it? Let's look at our repo real quick here. I do still. Okay, well, stream to do. I do still have to look at Tony if you end up coming across this video. I'm sorry, I still haven't got to this yet. We talked about Verso before this. It's gonna happen. I will come back to this eventually, but Tony pulled in like the code that I was running in this branch, did a few changes, and opened up a PR against this branch, which we did on stream in a couple streams. This stream to do is literally this app here. It seems to work with Verso. Verso being the thing that is built on top of Servo. And if that is the case, I'll probably end up pulling in and using it just because I think it's neat. But also I wanted to get the WebSocket stuff rolling here. So I'm sort of like running or these like lines of work need to merge before I could run all of it all at once. So I'm actually currently running a build from this branch. So until that lands, I'm probably not going to pull in this at least and run it on stream. I'll probably get this merged in and we can go from there. But anyways, getting a little distracted here. If we look over to the system tray, what is our no, not system tray, shortcut. Alt space, got it. So it should be this. There we go. Okay. All right. Now we know what it is. So I do think we look over at the Wry examples. We can run some Wry examples, and we'll see how they're put together, and that might end up affecting our decision if we wanted to like try copying one, just jumping right in and swapping. So let's go up a directory and over to Wry and open that up. It's gonna do some Rust analyzer stuff. And let's close Tao. Okay. This, you can see, we actually have that folder open already because we've looked at a few of these examples, but here's like a servo RS. Wait, really? What is this? What is this doing? Winit, WebView Builder, WebView. Wow, I didn't realize that this is here. Servo Wry demo. Git log. Oh, this is literally the demo for that. Okay, let's check out the, is it main? What is, oh, I can use this command. I forgot I wrote that command. Git fetch. So GCM, it actually uses the GitHub CLI and pulls the main branch because it doesn't bother me that like as an ecosystem we've sort of switched what the main branch is called, but not every project decided on the same thing, so now they're all slightly different. So I've got like, I swear like every project I work on, the main or default branch is slightly different, which is a little annoying, but I wrote this little utility that just grabs the main branch and then does a git checkout. So GCM checks out the main branch, or main being whatever the default branch is. And GFP actually does a git fetch and a git pull. Okay, so yeah, so this servo one goes away. There was a little bit of work to do. Yeah, WebView extension servo. So some of it is the getting servo in a place where we could use it. can be a lot of work. And that's part of why I think the work within Verso is being pushed forward, in part because I think they want to make a browser on top of it. Like that, I think the intent of Verso is a browser. So think in the vein of like Zen, or what are some of these other, like Zen or Vivaldi maybe. Um, I think that's kind of the intent, but built on top of Servo instead of Firefox or Chromium. I mean, they made a bunch of progress, but I think a lot of it was there's just a lot to do, and implementing it like at the browser level ended up being a better first step, is the vibe I'm getting. But I'm gonna actually keep this, even though the file's deleted now, I'm gonna keep it up just as a reference, because I think this is interesting in so far as like the intent of what I suspect we would want to do with CEF is probably something similar. We, again, here's the event loop. It runs the event loop. We are doing our window builder, very much the same as we set up with Tao. Here's our raw window handle, and oh, interesting. They have to do some. They're doing some AppKit stuff. So something special going on specifically with Mac. And then here's our web view builder in new servo. And then we do the builder.build. And this is, you can see some similarities to what the setup with the Verso plugin is. I suppose we can go over and look at, like if we go to tauri.app, and I guess we look at the blog that Tony put out, because I think there's some examples in here. Tauri Runtime Verso. So like this is how we're currently setting it up. I think this has evolved a little bit, which we could probably look at in here. So Verso DevTools, neat. Okay. We had set up Tauri plugin. Yeah, we had set up Tauri plugin DevTools. I was looking for it and trying to find it. Looks like maybe they ported that over, which is kind of neat. So we used to do this set Verso paths resource directory, but now we're the DevTools port still matters because it doesn't have DevTools built within the like this plugin runtime stuff, but it does have DevTools that you can use as long as you have Firefox installed. So this port is just, I'm presuming setting the port to then connect to those DevTools, or at least like make it available so as to allow connecting to it. And here's the big swap. We used to need this with these pieces, but I don't think you need any of that anymore. I think the big swap that Tony had kind of finished off was like doing this. So if we look at this and kind of compare to what we're doing here, you can see some similarities. And this is where like doing this event loop and wiring all this up is not something that we would expect a user to do. And I believe this is effectively what's happening in that Tauri runtime, Wry. So if we actually look over at is that in, I can't remember if that's in the main Tauri org or if that's in Wry. I think it might be in the main Tauri org. Or when I say main Tauri org, I mean like in the main Tauri repo. So Tauri apps / Tauri. If we look at packages, no, crates. Yeah, Tauri runtime Wry. So if we pop on over to sidebar stuff has been weird. Okay. Lib, I guess, librs. I suspect we'll see some very similar things here. Bunch of defining stuff, web context, some macros and such. So like the difference is running it in a way that allows the user being like the consumer or the person using this library to otherwise like access and work with some of these internals. So like create window, we don't really need it when we're doing a little demo like this. We just need to like run and set it up to where it renders a window, and that works fine for a demo. But part of like what this runtime plugin is doing is giving us like handles to these functions. But I think if we go down where we, oh my goodness, this is a big file. So it's not insignificant effort. And this is why, like, if you can get to the point where it's rendering in an example, like that's a first step, very, very much a first step. Because what you're doing is basically like mapping from user space to all of these like runtime handles. You want to be able to and like some of that is intentional abstraction so that we could have the option to do alternatives. So the Wry and Tao as a piece, and then these runtimes working with those pieces. I think that's always been the intent, that we could potentially swap out Wry. I know Daniel had popped in the chat last week. Daniel is Dengel and Discord are on the chat if you're following along and seeing them. But I know Daniel and I we've always been interested in seeing Servo take on or like become a possibility. So I know there's always been like some intent from folks, like the people working on it. We've always been interested in having alternatives. So there's a lot of code here because this was an intentional abstraction to allow the user to work with these APIs, but then give us the option to like swap out for a different option and use the same API still. So OMG, yes, is I mean, and maybe at some point some of this can be slimmed down, but you look at a lot of it and is, here's like themes, and then we got the configuration targets. So depending on, you have different this kind of stuff. So we have the lower level pieces and we have the higher level pieces. The things that need to the things that require effort is this kind of stuff. We need to do all that wiring between everything to enable it. So like a good first step is getting the example running. The next step from there is getting an example running basically in a place where like you can do this. So what they've done with Verso is wired it up so you can do at least some of these pieces. The feature set isn't there because, I mean, the Wry one is almost 5,000 lines just for this librs. Because you still have to do all that like mapping. And like I said, there's probably some level of like, we could potentially slim this down over time, but also every web view and system is slightly different already. So either the user has to deal with that or you write it into the library. And that's why we have thousands of lines of code in Tauri Runtime Wry. So to be clear, we're definitely not getting to the point where we're doing this today. Like, here's a create web view. So this is a handler that, with some like error checking and such, could not find the web view to runtime. So like there's some specific, and this is, I think this is potentially shown to the user too, because there was at some point, WebView 2 didn't actually come with the operating system. So there's still potentially a lot of work if you want to actually use CF as an option. But let's see if we can, come on, scroll. Why are you not scrolling? The middle mouse scroll was not working for me. Window wrapper. Yeah, so I think we'll end up having to basically do something like this. And that what Tony did from when we had him on the stream with this and into this is like starting that container. Maybe eventually there's some point where there's going to be a Tauri runtime servo, but Verso is already built on top of servo, and it's implementing some of those same handles that we'd potentially need. So there's some expectation that Verso could serve as like the way into using servo long term. Okay, so coming back to this, let's look at let's look here. I just want to search for event loop. Yeah, so here's the big piece, a Tauri runtime wrapper around Wry. So we have the Tauri runtime, and then we have the wrapper. If we go back and look at our Tauri architecture, we're looking at this piece right here. Tauri build is like just the thing that like makes the binary. CodeGen is just both CodeGen and like utils and macros. They're required, but effectively just there to like improve the DX of working with Tauri. Functionally, they don't. I mean, to be clear, they're useful, and I guess you could say, they are required. You have to use them right now, but they could, I think, in theory, go away, but then the user would have to deal with all of that. So it's DX on top of it, but like the main piece, the thing that's driving Tauri is this, where this arrow is. So we have looked at examples for Tao and Wry. That 5,000 line file is the librs for Tauri runtime Wry, but then there's the Tauri runtime. So the runtime is the thing that has, it's like the user facing abstraction over these more lower level APIs. I guess would be the way to say it. So you can see here the runtime wrapper. So Tauri runtime is the thing that's wrapping the Tauri runtime Wry or working with it. So the Tauri runtime can trigger functions on the plugin. When I say plugin, it's basically this Tauri runtime Wry. And then this is the thing that then maps to Wry, the actual like base level grade. Okay, so coming back to here, this demo that we had working with servo, and then this was I think this was when we had UA on. Like you can look at the UA. 18 months ago. So when I last pulled this. So it's been, I wouldn't say top of mind, but it's definitely been, it is sort of like an eventuality. The expectation is that we always wanted to get to the point where, and as long as Tauri exists and continues to exist, I think there's going to be a set of folks that are interested in pushing forward alternatives like this. So it's been an idea for a while. It's just finally getting to the point where we can actually like talk about it in a meaningful way to where somebody could actually potentially try it and use it. Now, we've had demos for a while. Like this was from a PR, this specific file. Okay, so I guess let's pull this back up. We have looked at Wry, servo, and the runtime. Now let's do some examples, I guess. So if we go in here, what would be a good example to look at? I really don't want to do anything too advanced. I think something in the same vein as like this cef-rs. So here's a winit. This is using winit directly. And now a reminder, Tao was originally forked off of winit and they've diverged slightly. But there's been work to like things that we did within Tao we've tried to or worked with and pushed back into winit. Not specifically so we can like unfork Tao, but maybe that eventually becomes a thing. But that like the feature set or the intent of winit was sort of diverging with what we wanted and needed within Tao. So that's, or excuse me, within Tauri. So that's why Tao became a thing. But like functionally, there's nothing preventing you from using winit with Wry at least. So that's what this is doing. Is there a Tao custom protocol examples? I don't want anything so multi-window, simple, here we go. This is probably the one to look at. Yep. So here, Wry, WebView Builder, and then Tao. So this is doing some work, and then here's our event loop. So I think if we would, I guess let's go ahead and try that first. We can take a look at what we're doing with CEF in that example that we ran. And we can see what that's doing relative to this simple RS. And it might be in a place where we could potentially pull some pieces over and give it a shot. I'm going to close this one. All right, I'll let it finish building here. Here we go. All right, so it is currently rendering like the Tauri docs. If we look at builder, we got builder with URL. It is rendering using WebView Builder, which is Wry, to be clear, the Tauri app website. Now, let's look at the CEF. We had a code. Let's go up a level to cef-rs. We had an example that we were running there. Let's do a little comparison here. If we pull up this one, I guess. Nice. So we have now this is cef-rs, which is and we're looking specifically at cef-simple, which is the example that we ran last week when we had Bill on the stream. There's a little bit of crossover here. We have some, we've got a run message loop and then shut down, assert. Assert equals initialize. So this is the one that we're running, right? We got the bindings, we got the manifest, helper, and there is a bundle command too. Interesting. I think this is probably where we want to be looking. And this is the piece where there's some similarities, right? It is definitely not in a place where we can like copy and paste though. So it, like when we look at Wry is kind of doing a couple things. It's setting it up and establishing an abstraction to each of the system web views. So if you're on Mac, it's one, Windows is another, Linux is a third, and then you have now mobile platforms to deal with. And so what? Well, we can look at this Wry example and we see an event loop. This event loop is within Tao. Tao is running this thing in a window and then rendering with Wry. So this example is doing a little bit of extra lifting here. And because it requires Tao to do the window and Wry to do like the internal thing. If we go over here, we got a little bit of the same going on here. See, we've got a window. And then we have this app. So demo app comes from, where is that coming from? Okay. Our Commutex, Sandbox. So like this is doing a bunch of the work to like render stuff within that window. So like here's a demo browser process handler, get raw. So on initialization, we render google.com. And like all of that is basically doing what this is. So it's probably not going to be in a place where we pull it in and use it directly in Wry. But I think there's probably going to end up being a plugin. And that might end up materializing itself in this like Tauri runtime CEF. But we need to somehow map from, basically like we need these APIs to exist someplace so as to normalize the what the user is going to end up using for when they're interacting with this. So we need this kind of stuff. It's just 323 is much greater than 66. And even like, so this is doing a bunch of stuff with the let web view. Even some of this is just dealing with like GTK and Android and iOS and such. Like most of what we're doing here is just a window with a specific URL and then dump it into the event loop from Tao. So there's probably even half that. We've got probably 30 lines of code that this is basically doing in 300. So in reality, we just we need a window, and then we need to be able to render the thing within there, which is, I think, basically like this app. And then this app has got a bunch of helper code to do that, because the abstractions aren't there. This cef-rs is we're working with Verso. The work that Tony did in Tauri Runtime Verso is kind of pieces of what we're looking at here. So I think we could potentially pull over some of this and try rendering basically this app. What's this initialize? Because in reality, all it needs is a window. And run message loop. What's this run message loop? Oh, lovely. Where do you think that comes from? Maybe RC? It probably comes from CEF somewhere, right? Yeah, run message loop is it looks like it's a function that's coming from CEF. So event loop here is coming out of Tao, right? And we've got a window builder. So there's some shared handle stuff going on where Tao, the window, is working with Wry to do those the shared ownership of those handles, and then the event loop as such. So we're potentially going to end up having to deal with that. I guess we've got an examples folder here already, right? If we do, we've got CEF symbol. What if we did, let's try doing it with Tao. Tao.rs. So we have CEF simple, which does a main RS. So if we just do a Tao.rs, what if we just copy this over and we start hacking away a little bit? We're gonna need to do some dependency management. If we look at the cargo.toml in Wry, we have features, dependencies. It's not going to be dependency because we only want it for examples. So we would only need to install it as a dev dependency. So here we've got a Tao as a dev dependency. I don't actually need. We might need some of these, but I'm not going to worry about it too much right now. This doesn't have dev dependencies at all. So I'm going to add a new section in CEF with Tao. That should at the very least give us access to this. Rust Analyzer might end up kicking off here and doing some work. Hint, hint. But until that happens, we can basically assume WebView Builder is going away. So we need to replace the code for Builder. We don't want to think about iOS and Android at the moment. At least I don't. So let's see. Builder.build window. So if it's not these, that would mean Linux. So if this is for Linux. And for everything else is that. So I'm gonna even take off this just to keep it as simple as we can get it. And we've got where's the web view come in? I don't even see where it's used. Oh, I guess it just needs the build. So it's doing a builder.build. In which case we could probably just do something like this. And that should work. I am going to actually... I think I'm going to just try getting this running. Oh, this virtual manifest specifies a dev dependency section, which is not allowed. Oh, why is it not allowed? Workspace package. We've got some like internals in here too. Oh, here, this one. Yeah. Okay. When I was mentioning before, I was expecting example to have something. That's this. I was expecting like a set of examples here. So we're probably gonna do whoop, back, undo this, copy, paste you, and I don't really care what operating system at the moment, so we're just gonna keep it like this, and then we're gonna say Tao, and we're gonna say Tao RS. I don't actually know if we need this, but let's give it a shot. So with Tao as dev dependency, and with if we pull in Wry as a dev dependency, 51.2 Wry equals let us make that consistent. There we go. Okay, REST analyzer is doing some work. I want to just get this running. Let's get this running, and then we can start swapping out pieces, because I think like there's this event loop run. I'm gonna need to figure out that. That's probably gonna be the pieces that's gonna end up being difficult, because there's a tile window builder, and it wires up the event loop, and then we need to do a builder. Oh. Window. Okay. So we tie it to the window. That's going to be the piece that we end up needing to swap out. It's like this piece. And so we might need to look at like how it's doing the event loop kind of stuff. That might end up getting tricky. It's still doing some work, but let's while it's doing said work, I guess let's pop over to, if we're running in the context of cef-rs, we might as well be in that folder. Now, if we do cargo run example Tao, let's just see if it works. If we get the thing rendering and showing up, we can start swapping out bits from here. Now I'm probably gonna get a warning because this isn't used anymore, which is fine. So we can probably do one of these, get rid of that when we get to that point, but I just want to make sure that it runs. Yep, warning, and it runs. Cool. Now, next step. We figure out what is going on here. We're potentially going to need this run message loop. I'm going to just like preemptively pull over. I don't know if I'm going to need darken mutex. I might. Yeah, why not? Why not? We'll pull it in. We can always delete, and we've got git history here too, helping us out. We've got a shutdown and we've got a run message loop. So in the case of this control flow, we're going to have to deal with that. This is going to be a piece that is a big question mark. So I guess let's do, where are we with Okay, I would say we ran some Wry examples. And now we're on like we ran some Wry examples. We got Tao running the Wry example using Tao and Wry running in the cef-rs repo. So now we're at the point where we've basically copied one and we're starting to do some swapping. What time we got here? We'll probably go for another like half hour or so and see what progress we can make. Here's a window. Demo new. So I think this is the bit that we're gonna have to like figure it out here. Wait, so you're using CF right now? Oh, not that button. That is what I wanted. Ish. Do I use a weird character for your eye? That question mark. The eventually yes. So Tauri as a thing has always had some expectation that like the web view has benefits, but there's always going to be potential alternatives that could make sense in specific contexts. Like performance might be better in one like browser engine or setup versus another. So it's always been built with the expectation that you have alternatives. So V1 was like getting, and V0, I guess, was kind of getting everything working. V2 was mobile to, in part because that's good marketing, but also the way mobile and desktop are put together are different enough that there was it made some sense to work on mobile so as to inform and like allow the APIs to change to fit all of these eventual platforms that were expected to be supported. So now that that's happened, at least in my mind, I think the next big step is alternative web views or alternatives to the web view. So CEF would be the big one. That is most folks are familiar with. Verso, which is built on top of Servo, is one of the other potential options. So then in theory, you could have up to 3 options as far as which like a rendering thing you would want to work with. It's set up in a way where it might actually not require a major version. But there's experimental stuff and we have things working in places. And last week we did Nekla. Hey, look, it's 3D-ish. We have things working in places that at least give a good demo. But what we're trying to do right now is wire up the Rust bindings that we have with potentially an example that we had within Wry, which is System Web View. Side note, Nicola, I did look at the 3D thing. I think I just like straight up removed it when I was doing some updates. So I'll need to put it back in. I don't remember why I did that. It's one of those things that I like look at every handful of months. And sometimes it's late at night and decisions are always questionable when you do late night programming. I think I was trying to move it into the same like physics because this like if y'all haven't tried it, shout out to this commands down where finger, there we go, down there. Do one of those. It does this. That is a physics engine written in Rust, converted to WASM, running in a browser, using React 3 Fiber, and those are all models that we made in Blender on stream. And one of the other things that we had set up with React 3 Fiber was that 3D command that Nicola's was using, and it did work at one point, but now it isn't and hasn't for a while. And yes, it has become the mascot of the screen, the stream, because I just keep forgetting or not making the time to go back and fix it. But as is the dev life, there's always things that are broken, and priorities are a thing. And also, it's like that. Lots of interest, lots of projects. So even if there's intent to make it a priority, there's a reason it's been broken for a while, right? That's just funny. All right, so we want to Tauri with CEF. In this case, we're only working with Tao and Wry, but we basically want to swap out Wry here. I think we're basically going to end up using this as a piece. And what do we got here? We're calling an initialize. So that initialize, if is browser process, otherwise do this. Print and a print. So it would print one of these. I'm not immediately obvious what the intent of this is. So there's some swap, like, isn't it? What would make it a non-browser process? I don't know that we would need to necessarily care about that at the moment. And I don't see anything happening with API hash. And add call to API hash. Yeah, I'm not sure what that would be offhand. I think we're probably just going to copy some of these bits, and then it's basically doing like a window.lock. So like this is doing the work of what Tao, I think, is basically doing. We'll have to potentially look at the CEF run message loop though. Just waiting to replace WebKit GTK with cef-rs. So yeah, Verso is at least in a place that you could try running it. And with the work that Tony's been doing on it, with some polyfills, you might actually get pretty close. We got a we got a demo on stream after Tony came on. Oh, so Tony came on the stream. Tony's been working on the Verso implementation, and specifically the plugin. And then we had things working. We started playing around with polyfills because there was some stuff not working with with that to-do app. So then we played around with polyfills, and we had it almost working, but I was looking for I think I had pulled in the global API script path, but I think this is the one that I don't remember what the difference is between these two. I've used both of them, but I never remember this one. And the documentation on these pieces is light. We'll put it that way. But they are kind of like plugin pieces. So unless you're like deep in the plugin ecosystem, you wouldn't even need them. So it hasn't been incredibly painful that's documentation is light, but yeah, we had spun up this plugin polyfill, and the idea here is that Verso on top of Servo is close, and potentially with a couple of these APIs polyfilled, it's like really close. In this case, I'm not using any of the like window type features. It's kind of just sitting in the background. What ends up being nice is that makes it easy to swap in these alternatives, because a lot of the work, as we saw in that like 4,000 line file, is in re-implementing all of these same APIs. So if all you need to do is render a web view and you don't even care about any of the stuff around it and any of those handles, you might be able to swap now. So once I like finish up some streams of work there, we might end up running this on servo on stream. Well, when I say on stream, like build it and run it with and have the app running with servo and then use it on stream. Yes. So I think honestly the WebKit 2 GTK on Linux or Star Nix, however you want to address it, that is probably going to be the place that's going to have the biggest immediate win once these get to a place where they're a more direct option is maybe the best way to say it. But honestly, the Verso stuff is coming along pretty quick here. Tony's really been pushing on it. But then you're still at the mercy of how far along servo is. So depending on what APIs you need, servo might not be in a place that supports that. But also like WebKit 2 GTK has had issues with WebRTC for a while, right? So depending on what your app needs, you may actually, it's a file system and the OS is the web. What is Plan 9? Plan 9 continuance? I feel like I should know that, but it's not. It's just nothing. I'm drawing blanks. Works and go. I feel like it's just going like way over my head. Oh. Okay. Yeah. Was that a while ago? It's like very vague, like very foggy. Speaking of operating systems, Jonas had been working on Tauri for quite a while, but has more recently, let's see if I can spell their name right. First shot. I'm not going to. Nope. Well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this either. Jonas has been or had been working on the Tauri team for quite a while, and then has gotten a strong interest in. How did I spell it? Is that what I spelled? Maybe I forgot the C. Yeah, they're working on a K23 experimental WASM microkernel operating system. So, if you're at all interested in like that kind of stuff, it seems really neat. TBD on like where they're at with that, but like, yeah, go check it out if that's your speed. I haven't. I think WASM is really neat. And I think like what WASM on as like an option within the context of like Kubernetes, using like WASM functions or something like that. It seems really like that feels like a really cool thing for me, and it's been something I'm always been interested in. They're getting there though, like risk support. It's coming along. What is the last? Yeah, Kotlin on K23. It's coming along. Check it out. Shout out to Jonas here. You've been using LiveKit's lib WebRTC bindings and pushing into a GStreamer and embedding the GStreamer window in a Tauri window. Yeah. I'm sorry. That doesn't sound fun. What Is LiveKit a LiveKit? This LiveKit? I feel like that's one of those things that is like, no, this one. There's a lot of overlap in LiveKit, I feel like. Is this one? Yeah. Yeah, that one. It's got to be that one, right? Based on what you're saying. That's oof. It has been one of those things that is just like, it feels like it makes sense to build on top of the platform, but the platform isn't always in the space to support it necessarily. And like, I think folks sometimes think of Linux as like an operating system, but in some ways it's like a lifestyle. um, and there's so many niches there and like so many ways to like get it working and building and competing efforts too. It has been a non-insignificant amount of effort to provide support there. So Nicolay through service workers and processes and context as files with capabilities. Neat. Yeah, there's a who I'm gonna fail to remember this now. Well, in a maybe not next week. I might actually poke at this a little bit more next week. Because I think we could potentially get kind of close. Um, we might end up playing around with this next week, but I think maybe the following week I want to dive back into the local first arena a little bit again. And I'm failing to remember who was talking about this concept, but the idea of um, like everything is a file, and like one of the tenets that seems to be pretty common about or in the space of like local first is that there's some level of like data ownership and ability to take your data elsewhere as the system evolves or this if you're building or using an app and the app just happens to disappear, being able to take your data out and still be able to use it in some way, I think has a lot of overlaps with like it's a file system. A virtual environment kit for the local first web inspired by Plan 9. What is that? I'm curious now. That's a Wanix. This isn't going to be a code from the website. Is this the same thing that you were talking about otherwise? Run JS and a web worker. Okay, I'll have to drop this in the Discord. We'll have to talk about that a little bit. I'll pick your brain then, because I want to see if we can get a little bit more progress on this before we call it a day. But either we'll chat about it in the Discord or we will come back to it on stream here. Speaking of, got to give my shout out to the Discord. I still haven't actually put the URL in a good spot, but I've dropped it on stream a few times. If you're interested in continuing any of the conversations, actually, it sits up here, right? And you do the Discord chat thing. Would love to see you in the Discord. Hop in and we can continue chatting about all the stuff we end up talking about on the stream. A lot of local first and Tauri, and in some ways, that's because there's a lot of overlap in like what we're trying to do with Tauri and what I what I would personally like to see happen within the local first ecosystem, but also I've been slowly working through and building this, which wants to use all of those same tenants. Happen. Okay. Yes, we will come back to this. I will leave it up, but we want to see if we can get this little bit working here. So we have Tao. Tao is running with Wry here. If we pull over this demo app, what is this demo app doing? We have a new, and it's calling app new. With the window. CEF bindings. So it's got the bindings to the app. I don't know what RC stands for. It feels like there's RC is showing up in a few places here. And then there's a clone. So that's doing some stuff with I'm sure the arcmutex, yeah, self.window.clone. I don't know that we need to worry about that too much here. And also, like, there's a swap between is browser process versus not. I don't know that we need to care about that. So, all of that being said, sandbox, what's execute process? And see, this is where I think we're going to run into the most difficulty is the execute process. Here, let's do this. If we blindly import all this stuff, it starts to get a lot. I mean, it's not saying that Woodbill or whoever, whoever did this, I'm not saying is wrong, but like, okay, that's why there's a lot of stuff that ends up being imported. I just wanted to see what is actually coming from the CEF crate. So a lot of it is. So we've got the initialize and shut down and run message loop. So there's some like expectation that CEF is going to be the thing that's executing the process. But also we might just need to look at the options and maybe we have a place where we can use like a shared window handler or something. Because if we already have the like if we just have this and we have the window, like if it's basically just this, where's that code that's doing this little bits here? Yeah, on context initialized. So it's doing some like process handling here. So ample for demo process handler. So we have an impl that is doing a new function new, takes a window and returns a browser process handler, which I'm guessing is probably a CEF thing. So like functionally, we've got a web view builder new, and then we have these bits, right? I'm assuming there's some level of like, I think we can call app new, which seems to be coming from CEF. We're gonna remove this args, because what I wanted to do is complain at us. We'll say let app equals standard PTL null mute. Where's that self coming from? New self. Failed to resolve. Okay, so this would be end up then being a CF app, I'm presuming. Yep, new, and then self. Is that? Or is that a different self? Oh, this needs to be one of those semicolon, not a, there we go. Failed to resolve self and paths. Can only be used in start position self. Okay. I think we need to like look at this anyways. So we are starting to get into the, okay, it is into the bindings. So it takes a new is an interface and that returns self. Oh, which is T wrap app. Where wrap app? Okay, impl app. And that's that wrap RC. Some of this too is like we might want to just pull some of it over because I like functionally I can kind of see what's happening, but also it starts to get into Rust that I'm less familiar with. I'm like, I know enough Rust to be dangerous, and most of my Rust that I've learned has been like working within the context of the Tauri org. Hey, yes, you. Just look at my green screen again. Say hi. Nothing. No. Most of the Rust that I've learned has been like in the context of the Tauri org, and that means that I probably know cargo better than I know Rust, in part because I've done a bunch with publishing side crates. So it's a little bit ironic because I feel like folks get more involved with Rust and then they figure out all the cargo intricacies. Okay, all right, we're gonna do the cross arms so I can give the cat the attention that it needs. All right, so demo app. It's calling demo app new. So I think that's probably going to be, I mean, we don't really need this window stuff here. So that is going to change. But this app new is going to end up being a CEF. And so this, I think we can switch out to be demo app. And then I think we pull some of these bits through. So demo app new. And then we need to give it something here. So we have a demo app. Can I find type this? We'll have to swap out this window. And I think this window then could be instead a window. I'm not sure how that's going to end up working. there's a web view. Let's see, window, web view builder new, and then it unwraps. So we get a window. And this window, can I find type window? Okay. So I don't know that we need this arcmutex stuff. We're gonna try it without it, see what happens. I think what we want to try to do is say it should be a Tao window. I don't know if that's on the we might need to do one of whoop. Let's do a window. I guess a window. And then app would be app from CEF. Okay, so it's not complaining at us. Cannot find trait wrap app. So we need to where's that? Ample. Cannot find trait wrap app in the scope. Consider importing. Oh, there's a bunch of these like bindings and traits and impls and such that like I wouldn't. It seems very generic. It seems like like wrap app just feels like a demo thing in my head. So like we have demo app and then wrap app just feels like it should be part of just the demo. Okay. Mismatched types. We need a window, which is a window. Wrap RC. Here. Some of this is going to be like we can get that type in a good spot. And then it's going to be questionable if it even works. The trait bound demo app impl app is not satisfied. The trait impl app is implemented for app. So we need this bit. Yeah, and this is going to start getting into we might end up needing to pull in some of this. What do we got? 42. We're going to grab. It looks like we need an impl app. Cat scratched me here. Well, not really scratching me, but like they have their front claws and sometimes they get excited and they have trouble keeping the claws in enough that it doesn't like catch in my shirt. Hi. What do you need? Are you coming up to say hi? Come in. Okay. Tail goes down. You can stay and hang out. Just chill. Okay. So I think what we're gonna basically end up doing is just swapping out a bunch of these pieces for and trying to like wrap or wire up Tao instead of the window that it has. So like part of this is there is a window, and that window is coming from CEF. So CEF has its own window, but I don't think it's it's just a convenience function, I think, to make it easy to render the thing, not an actual like full feature like what we'd want to see, like something that you'd see in Tao. So we have a demo app and window. So I'm not importing CEF star anymore, which means that we won't have window defined unless we import it, which would be here. So any instance of window should be the Tao version. And we've got, here's an impl app. I guess let's give it a save. And yeah, okay, this is what I was expecting. More squigglies. Window create top level. So on context initialized. Yeah, so this bit here is the, because this is like when it calls initialize down here, it is the thing that's doing the window. Okay, going down. All right. We could, I don't know that there's any like examples otherwise either. Like this is at a place where it's got some not only like DX getting it working, but also DX is in like docs are a thing. Just looking for like what's it like top level. CEF. So like what is our options here? Whoop. Ah, okay. Browser host. If we don't need the window, what's the minimal piece that we would actually need to use? So here's that shutdown. There's RC, args. Here's a window handle and a window. So it might end up being something where, like if we look at this implementation using Wry and Tao, we have a window and a window builder. It builds a window, which gives us the window. And then we do a builder, and then we build with that window. Stop, look at my green screen. You. Drives me bonkers. Okay. Can we look on here? We still have create site open CEF, use CEF and Rust, and this is yep. Okay. Like I said. But do we get any? Here's a docs.rs. We're not going to get examples in here, but reference counted module. Our reference counted. Okay, so that's what RC stands for. Okay. Reference counted trait has 4 types, has CEF base ref counted T. So I don't know what ref counted is for, but we know what it stands for now at least. And then top level, if we look at, so we've got a bunch of traits. a bunch of structs, and a bunch of functions. I don't see anything that jumps out at me as far as the actual functions go. Because I think ideally all of the functions that we were using in the demo are something that we could potentially let Tao do. Now, is there like a we've got a bunch of wrap. There's impls. So we've got a window. CF window T from our docs. What does this have? A window is a top level window / widget in the views hierarchy. By default, it'll have a non-client area with title bar icon. So this, I think, is effectively like what Tao is doing. And then right handler, okay. Window delegate. What does window delegate say? Implement this structure to handle window events. This could potentially be the thing that we on key event can max. Like this might be the thing that gets wired up to the event loop within Tao. V8 handler, touch, time, text. Hi, Kitty. I don't know if you can hear that, but or if you can see it, she will paw my elbow. Like, hey, give me attention. Hi, yeah, we're talking about you. Okay, we're running short on time here, but I just want to see if there is anything that looks like we could slot in place of that, like web view builder. Implement the structure to provide handler implementations. Okay, that doesn't seem. So there's a browser view, browser host. Client, content strings, cookie, cursor, dialog handler, display handler. Let's open up display handler. I'm kind of interested in any of some of these handlers are like download handler. That's not a handler that we would care about. Yeah, well, at least at the moment. But like some of these other handlers might be the things that we would care about as far as like hi. As far as like wiring up that window. What do you need? Do you just need that attention? Then come up. Just sitting up here and not giving enough attention, I guess. All right, CF browser view. We'll go cat mode and we'll just read a couple of these, and then I think that's probably what we're gonna call it. So a view hosting a CF browser T instance. So what would be a view? Get browser, get Chrome toolbar, get runtime style, base structure. A view is a rectangle within the view's view hierarchy. I think that's all within the actual like window. I mean, I guess it makes sense because it's the thing that's rendering, but represent the browser process aspects of a browser. It's got some get opener window handle, get window handle. She does it. I don't know if she likes that because she's waiting for me to like actually scratch, but she'll just like stick her hand right in my hand and just not move. Like it's comfortable kind of thing. I mean, get window handle. Like this feels CEF window handle. This feels like potentially something that we would want to get into. But I don't know if it's using that like shared window handle that we could build on. I presume not. So that like just getting the window handle might not be enough. CF display handler. Display state. No, I don't think that's what we care about. Frame handler. Handler events related to CF frame T lifespan. I don't think that's what we care about. Okay. I think we want to try to get to CF window handle. That feels to at least like understand what and where. And so there's like browser process handler here, base ref count. All of this is like has some expectation that we are doing a window mute delegate, demo window delegate, browser view. Yeah, browser view create. Like all of this seems to be demo client. Actually, here, let me I want to see where demo client's coming from. It is not in there at all. Weird. Okay. Yeah, browser process handler. I think we do potentially want this impl, but also and like on context initialized, I think we potentially do want some of those pieces. But it's not like this window here is a, it doesn't really say it, but builds the window and it gives a window OS error. Move event control flow. I think this is the shared window handler. I mean, we get the platform impulse stuff, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. So like, I think Tao is using the same thing that when it ended up settling on, which is kind of what a bunch of these other Rust crates are settling on, which is this like shared window handler where you could pass the window handler, you know, considering Rust ownership, etc., through to these different things to render within the window. But if CEF has its own, that might give us trouble. So we might not be able to do, at least jump directly to this. So we might have some level of like, I mean, at some point, if we're not using Tau, yeah, this event loop might give us problems, and getting this window piped into whatever we end up setting up with or working with CEF, those are probably going to be the pieces that we really need to dig into. And honestly, I'm kind of feeling looking at this next week. I'll put up on the schedule for Bob over here. Schedule for next week. I think we can continue this. Let's give this a shot. We'll continue it, and I don't know how far we'll end up getting. I'm not gonna like keep pushing on it too hard, at least not on stream, unless it's it seems like we can make some solid progress. But I think we're getting down to like the gist of like how a couple of these pieces fit together. So we'll give it a little bit more time next week, and then maybe the week after. I want to get back into some local first stuff, and we'll do a little bit of local first. We'll do and maybe come back to some project work as well. But yeah, hopefully this has been interesting. Seeing some of these inner pieces. Hopefully we can help push some things forward in the ecosystem, and maybe we get some CEF and Tauri here soon. But next time, have a happy Tuesday. See you next Tuesday. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Bye.